So we want the definite integral from 1 to 5, 13x squared plus 8x minus 4 dx. Step 1 in this question is to find the antiderivative. So let's start by finding the antiderivative of x squared. If we think about how this works, in order to get a 2, we must start with a 3, and to cancel out that 3 when it would come down, we would need to multiply by 1/3. In other words, d by dx of 1/3 x cubed, if we check it out, is 1/3 times 3 times x squared, which is x squared. So if the derivative of 1/3 x cubed is x squared, then the antiderivative of x squared, we can have 1/3 x cubed. Now I've only accounted for the antiderivative of x squared. I haven't accounted for the antiderivative of 13x squared. But we can just multiply by a 13 right here, because when you take a derivative, multiplying the constant just stays in front. So the antiderivative of 13x squared is 13 times 1/3 x cubed, or we could rewrite that as 13 over 3x cubed. And let's keep that in our back pocket. We also need to find the antiderivative of 8x. If we think about what would give us the derivative 8x, well, if we see an x, we must have started out with a quadratic. And when that 2 came down, it multiplied by something to give us 8. So if we put in a 4x squared here, it's true that the derivative of 4x squared is equal to 8x. And so an antiderivative of 8x is 4x squared. Finally, if we look at the antiderivative of minus 4, or just 4, the antiderivative of 4, okay, we have to think backwards. The antiderivative of 4 would be 4x. So I have these three pieces. An antiderivative of this function would be 13x cubed to the third plus 4x squared plus 4x. I am not done. Okay, this is just that I have now found the antiderivative. The next step is to take the bounds and plug them in. Okay, so step 1, we found the antiderivative. Step 2 is to take the bounds, and by the bounds I mean these numbers, plug in and subtract. We're plugging into the antiderivative. So it's common to call this antiderivative big F of x. And what I'm trying to evaluate here is f of 5 minus f of 1. So f of 5 will be 13 over 3 times 5 cubed plus 4 times 5 cubed plus 4 times 5 minus 13 over 3 times 1 cubed plus 4, this should have been 4 times 5 squared right here, plus 4 times 1 squared plus 4 times 1. If you calculate this, this will reduce to a number that is the answer. Of course, this is also a correct answer. We don't necessarily have to simplify it. This is the final calculation we would need to do to get the answer. So the two steps are find the antiderivative, or an antiderivative, and secondly, we could take the bounds, plug in, and subtract, evaluating the difference of the antiderivative between the upper bound and the lower bound.